Hey, I'm Adi and I'm 16 years old. I live in Morocco and just lived a creepy event, and I'm so excited to be able to share it. So here it is. I live in an apartment with my family, and I'm in a period where I need to focus for my final exams. Today, as usual, I'm sick, and so I didn't go to school. So I used this free time to practice more for the up-and-coming tests, and at approximately 8 p.m., my father called me and suggested me a car ride in order to spend time with each other. My parents are divorced, so when I'm with my mother, I see him less often than her. So, I was with my father for like 30 minutes and it was nice. When we arrived in front of the building where I live with my mother, I said goodbye to him and I went towards the building. I pushed the button of the intercom so that my mother could open the door, and I saw a food deliverer with his motorcycle parked just next to me. So here comes the problem. I thought that he was going to deliver something to a neighbor. Nothing unusual here, but there was something off. Firstly, usually deliverers in Morocco, I don't know if this is the case in other countries, have a box where they store the food in order to keep it warm. But this guy didn't have one. He was holding the bag with the food in his hand while riding the motorcycle. Also, he opened his phone like if he was going to check a delivery app. But as I said, he didn't have the box or the logo of a delivering service anywhere on him. So, even if my mother unlocked the door, I preferred not to open and talk to the guy. I order from restaurants and fast food a lot, and I'm used to seeing the deliverers and even talk a little bit with them to try and make them laugh. I know that it's a hard job because of people being jerks, so I try to be as friendly as I can. So I start by saying hi and how are you bro in Moroccan, and the guy was super nice. He had a great smile and a nice way of talking. But he took time before answering me like if he was lagging. But it's okay, it happens. Maybe he was stressed or preoccupied, so nothing to worry about. I asked him what door number it is and he replied 42, which is odd because the last door of the building is the 14th. So I told him to check the app and then I tried to watch his phone, even though I'm not next to him, and instead of opening a delivery app, he opened a WhatsApp and didn't even open a chat. Then he said door 11, and at this moment, I knew something was wrong because I lived at door 12 and so the 11th door was right next to me. And I'm sure that my neighbors weren't the ones to order because they were on a trip. So then I got a little bit stressed up and told him that it must be an error because of the reason that I just told you. But he insisted to go in and told me that he used to deliver at this address and that he knows where he needs to go. He also tells me that the customer knows him and that he asked him to be quick because he liked his food to be as hot as possible. I clearly said to him that I couldn't let him enter the building, but that I was going to check if the guys on the 11th door were back from their trip, and if so, I was going to let them know that he was there. I also told him that the guard of the building was usually in the cafe next by, and that he could go and talk to him. I also lied to him and told him that my dad was waiting for me, and that I just needed to go see the WC for a second. He was angry at first, but he immediately changed his attitude and became friendly again. I asked him to step aside, and then I asked again my mother to unlock the door, and I entered. I was still nervous, and while I was walking towards the elevator, I suddenly got really scared because I didn't hear the door close behind. I felt so dumb because I could have closed it myself, but at this moment, I was sure that he was entering the building. I immediately started running towards the staircase, and at that same time, he tried to throw the bag that he was holding at me. I don't know why, but he missed. At this moment, I am thinking really quickly. I have Crohn's disease, which, to be short, is a disease that causes inflammation of the intestines and pain. But according to my doctor, it also explains why I'm an anxious person, and why I usually think too much. And so, I already thought in the past of a scenario where I needed to hide from something in the building. I know it's weird, but I've came to the conclusion that the underground parking garage was the best place, because it was really large due to the fact that it was shared by 4 buildings. So I run towards the staircase and I immediately started going downstairs. Now before I continue, I need to say that I'm a pretty tall guy, around 6'3", and so it's difficult for me to hide quickly. And so I run and I hear him chasing me. At this moment, I remember that the other buildings have their own doors in the parking lot, so I run towards one of them. I see someone from afar and I start screaming, "Call the caretaker of the building." But he didn't react and then he entered one of the doors. So I go upstairs, open the door of the building and enter the bakery just next to it. Luckily, I find the caretaker or the concierge and explain to him really quickly what was happening. He immediately got out of the bakery and started chasing him, but was too far away, and he was running towards his motorcycle so we couldn't catch him. I was tired of all that running by then, but strangely, I wasn't shocked at all. And still, while writing this, I feel a little bit excited about what happened. I'm definitely not going to tell my parents because otherwise, they would forbid me to go out alone or take a taxi. I tried to look out for the bag that he tried to throw me, but it wasn't there anymore when I got back. I know that I'm selfish for not calling the police, but I prefer not to worry about it because they never do anything anyway. Before I start telling the story, I have to say that this happened over 3.5 years when I was between the ages of 15 and 18. All the people in this story have been changed for privacy reasons. I grew up in a pretty good-sized town. My high school grades always had between 800 to 1,000 students. The town was about 45 minutes to an hour from the second biggest city in the state, which is known for 3 rivers and many bridges. I have 2 older brothers, which means obviously I am the youngest of 3 boys. Our mother was the general manager at my grandpa's golf course, but by no means were we well off in any way, but we were far from poor. And our father was in the state police, a lieutenant at the time of everything happening. And cop dad was hard on us when needed, but we all 3 learned to always be respectful no matter what, unless extreme situations call for not being it. I will say that due to a very dark history that I never had a close relationship at all with my brothers or my parents. Even with all of that, I'll admit this made my dad and I be slightly close even for very short time periods, and that we only had one thing in common, that we would each protect the ones we love at all costs, even if it meant our lives. Him with my mom or family, and I with my girlfriend, nieces, and nephew. When I was 15, I went to the downtown area getting food and ice cream with friends at a place about a half mile from the high school football stadium. Being that we were only 15 years old, going into our 10th grade year of high school and almost 16, we all rode our bikes to meet up. My hometown was split up into 6 wards. The restaurant was 1 to 2 miles away. I live in the 1st ward. When we came back outside to leave to do something else, I realized that my bike was missing. As soon as the group and I checked the immediate area, I called my dad knowing that he was home from work, and he flew down to where I was. We all figured he would be upset at us, which he wasn't at all. All my friends got on their bikes to go off in different directions towards their own homes to look for the bike. As my dad and I were driving towards the part of town that we lived in, we saw a group of 3, 2 males and a female, walking down a side street towards the street that we were on, about 1.5 miles from the restaurant. The group was pushing my bike as they walked, causing me to snap attention and say loudly, "They have my bike." My dad stopped immediately and put the car in park in the street. We jumped out and I laughed inside due to seeing my dad go from usual to cop dad. While he had the girl and one guy stand at the wall with their faces touching it, and he slammed the guy with the bike to the ground. I grabbed the bike and put it in the bed of the truck. Since it was only 2 of us against 3, my dad told me to get in the truck so they don't see your face. I said screw that, and it wasn't until years later that I came to regret that. The cops came and arrested all 3 of them. Fast forward to about 2.5 years later, I was 18 years old and home for my freshman year of college. which was spent at a military college across the state from my home, which stuff I learned during my time at the school will help out. I was out jogging around 6 p.m. one night on the sidewalk next to the road when a car flew past me. It sat at the stop sign until I passed them. Luckily, I was close to home and I memorized the car details or as much as I could. The vehicle drove and went a lot slower, and I walked into the house when they were passing. I didn't think anything wrong with the situation other than somebody driving fast and slowing down, upon realizing that somebody was jogging. Fast forward about a week and I just finished up another jog. I walked into the house through the front door, which leads right into the kitchen, which has a big window that looks out to the driveway, the front yard, and the street and stop sign. As soon as I walked to the sink by the window to splash some cold water onto my face, I heard a loud boom from outside sounding like an M80 exploding, and then 1 second of silence, and then 3 loud booms in quick succession, which, thanks to being a hunter, I knew was gunfire. I dropped down, crawled to the door, and grabbed the baseball bat my brother and I used before, and ran out the door even though I knew the bat had a 0% chance of winning against a firearm, but I was hoping that it would surprise them. When I got outside, they were driving away and I recognized the vehicle from a week earlier that sat at the stop sign when I was out jogging. Thankfully, no one was home at the time, since who knows where they'd be standing or what would have happened. After the police came and I had given my statement, we waited. Since the town was big for a town, it was also small enough that a lot of people knew everyone. The town's police, my brothers all joked with me, asking like, "Did you try to be a hero when no one was around?" Or they would ask if I was crazy due to running outside towards gunfire without a gun. Well, 2 or 3 days had passed when we had received a call from the cops saying that they had caught the guy who shot at the house. As it turns out, it was the same guy who stole my bike about 2.5 years earlier. After finding that out, my dad and I looked at each other without saying anything. We didn't tell Mom about it being the same guy and that they had seen me finish up and walk into the house, luckily by chance. The guy had received 10 years for attempted murder with a weapon, attempted assault, but due to not a single person being injured in any way, no assault charges of any kind were charged towards him. So we went on with our lives and I became an EMT during college, working on weekends, and then I finished up school. When I was about 26 years old, I had stopped by the parents' house when I was in the area. I walked into the kitchen and on the kitchen table was the town's newspaper, which the front page read something along the lines of, "Local woman missing, vehicle found abandoned and burned." As I started reading the article for a second, I almost immediately ripped the kitchen table off the frame with rage. The article said that the missing woman's boyfriend for some period of time was the same guy who had stolen my bike and shot at my parents' house with me in the front window. He wasn't arrested or charged with any crime related to the missing woman at that time. I left and went back to my apartment an hour away and made sure that I was always carrying a pistol, except when I was working on the ambulance. Even through all the rage that I was feeling, somewhat paranoid thoughts of he may be following me still, even if it's unlikely. My parents left their house for a week to stay in my grandparents' house, which was empty due to him living at the golf course. Life went on from there. I still work as an EMT in the second biggest city in my state. The guy who shot at my house is currently in prison on charges of crimes and not related to the murder of the lady in my hometown. So I got some Dunkin' this morning and it brought this story back to mind. Figured that I would share it. And during high school and college, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts for about 7 years and I bounced around to a few different locations. I was used to working at the Dunkin' in my town where we would get the yeast rings delivered periodically and frost them ourselves as needed. I transferred to a new shop about a half hour from my house with all the same responsibilities except for the donuts. They were delivered by corporate, and they arrived defrosted almost perfectly. They looked like the plastic donuts that they show in commercials, always round and not squished together, and they would dip them in frosting so it was evenly spread and neat. It was a busy Saturday morning and was close to Valentine's Day, so we had a fresh order of brownie batter donuts delivered that morning. We were slammed, which was normal for a weekend, so it wasn't out of the ordinary to see my manager, who I'll call Jeremy, running around stressed out. When he first ran past me, I didn't think anything of it, and I continued making sandwiches at the sandwich station. He rushed by carrying a pastry tray, and I watched him begin frantically throwing something in the trash, looking worried out of his mind. At first I laughed and just said, "Jeremy, what the heck are you doing?" He straightened out and looked absolutely beside himself. I had never seen Jeremy look so lost, so I asked what was going on and if something was wrong. Someone filled the brownie batter donuts with staples. He told me that he got a phone call from corporate that one of the stores in our chain, which contained 10, had somehow discovered multiple staples in every donut in their order. That was at least 48 donuts from our store and more or less for the other 9, depending on their sales. They told Jeremy that we had to get rid of the most recent delivery, because whoever put the batter in the filler dumped a ton of staples in it as well. Thankfully, we hadn't sold all of the previous orders yet from that morning, because it was still relatively early. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was going to be sick. What if a young kid had gotten one of them? I pictured some family sitting at home on a Saturday morning, going out to get some drinks and donuts for the kids, and imagined everything else that could have happened after. I never found out what came of it, and as far as I know, neither did my boss. I'm assuming nothing happened because I thankfully never heard anything on the news. Makes me wonder if they covered it up, and I hope they were able to find out who the guy was who did it. This happened a year ago, but I still think about it. Me, a 17-year-old female, and my friends who were 19 had the munchies and wanted Taco Bell at 2 a.m. So we took my mom's car and went on our journey. On our way home, though, my friends took a wrong turn and ended up in a cul-de-sac. As we were turning around, a resident on the street gets into his truck and starts pulling out right in front of our car. Us, thinking that he's going out somewhere, waits for him to go, but he just sits there for a second before getting out and coming towards the driver's side. I'm in the back driver's side, so I can see him in clear view. He walks up to my friend driving and starts yelling at her to slow down, and that she's going too fast down the street, and that us just listening in disbelief because she was going 16 and a 25, but whatever. Until he started banging on my friend's window and tried opening her door. For what reason are you trying to open a car full of teenagers? I mean, what are you going to do? I can see him trying to do this, so I tell my friend to drive, because I don't want to be sitting here anymore. She pulls off and he jumps in his car behind us. Halfway out of the street, I noticed and I stuck my entire upper half out the window yelling at him. I spilt my Coke for that. At this point, he's chasing us while I'm giving my friend directions back to my house. All of our phones are pretty much dead too. He ends up in front of us and he cornered us in another cul-de-sac up the street. My friend was driving in people's lawns to get away. Eventually, he followed us all the way home. My friends ran inside to tell my mom. I went straight for the car, yelling at him. He asked what I yelled out the car, and I said to his face that he was a freaking baby. He gets upset and almost gets out of the car when he sees my mom come out of the house. And he tries leaving, so I stood behind his truck, yelling out the license plate numbers. She makes it to him and his entire demeanor changes, acting innocent like he was scared. I was told to go inside, and my mom obviously gave him some words of wisdom. She tells me that he followed us home because someone ran over his dog a while back because they were speeding through his street, which I do not believe, but still gives no excuse to following teenage girls home. So, to the bald man in the red truck, you're a straight up baby and a weirdo.